Well, we're getting numbers in now. It turns out retailers saw the weakest holiday sales season since 2008. Hurt by bad weather. More importantly, of course, rising uncertainty about the possible tax increases and spending cuts that could come next year. With still no deal to avert the fiscal cliff, we're wondering whether these concerns will continue to keep shoppers from spending into 2013.
Well, let's ask Laura Champagne of Canaccord Genuity Securities and CBC contributor Stacey Ridlitz. Ladies, thank you so much for having us. I nearly said thank you for having us.
Well, they're having us.
We're thanking you for coming on the show. Stacey, you know, we often say here we are day in, day out on financial news talking about the fiscal cliff. Economists talk about the fiscal cliff. Politicians talk about the fiscal cliff. We are wondering whether mom and pops at home talk about the fiscal cliff. Is the lack of a budget deal actually spooking shoppers out there in Main Street?
It is. You might be surprised to hear that, but Walmart told us that 75% of their customers have cited that they're worried about the fiscal cliff. You know, Mandy, you and I were on last week talking about the luxury retailers, and we called out Saks saying that business pre-holiday was particularly weak. What are the people in the stores telling me at Saks? What were they telling me all week? They were telling me this is the worst pre-Christmas they had seen in over a decade, and part of that was because their consumers are worried about the fiscal cliff. So note to the government, it does matter.
Yeah, but that's, as you say, part of it. Laura, what else is going on? I mean, it just felt like we were going into a lackluster season here. What happened?
I mean, there's been some discussion about weather trends as well, but I think whether or not we go over the fiscal cliff, consumers are starting to get the impression that next year we'll probably see higher taxes and lower entitlements. The only place in our space where we really see a very significant fiscal cliff hit is that aspirational customer. So the step-up customer into low-end Tiffany's jewelry, for example, we just don't think they showed up this year.
So even if people, Stacey, are going to be hit by higher taxes next year, or at least some people are going to be hit by higher taxes next year, a lot of this is psychological, isn't it? You turn on the TV, you always hear about the fiscal cliff, you're feeling spooked, right? Once we have a deal and resolution, the uncertainty's been taken away, do you think people will unleash their spending? Will this be unlocked?
Well, I think at the high end, yes, there will be some relief. And, you know, to Laura's point, you know, we were in Tiffany over the weekend. You would be shocked how much sales help was available on the silver floor. Typically, you can't get near a salesperson there. But I think, yes, a lot of it is psychological. But then again, Christmas has come and gone. The full margin products have come and gone. So great, you fix the fiscal cliff, and then you go into clearance where gross margins are horrible, and that's where the retailers make their sales. That's not a good combination.
And in fact, Stacey, you call this period right now sort of panic time for those retailers, don't you?
It is panic time. You know, it's been a disappointing season. We haven't heard the numbers from specific retailers. That's right around the corner. But you can bet, based on, you know, what I was hearing in the stores, it was doom and gloom. You can bet that retailers will be hitting the clearance panic button, and that is bad for gross margins, even though we have very easy comparisons for last year.
Bad for them, good for us, though, the shopper, right? Laura, let's talk
Great
stocks.
for us.
Great for us. Laura, stock winners and losers this season.
We really like Williams-Sonoma in part because they have a huge skew online. Most of their profits actually come from e-commerce. So even if spending overall is dampened, there is more spending migrating online, and Williams-Sonoma had some good products that we think will take people out to the stores. It has already and will continue to through January. Losers, like we said, Tiffany's may have some trouble at the higher margin, lower price points, but I think we should look at some of the big winners this year to pull back next year. Those would include Gap, those would include Lowe's. A number of retailers that have worked really well in 2012 may not see as bright a future in 2013.
And how do you think the big boxes did? Stacey, what do you think? How'd they do this year?
Well, you know, I would agree with Laura on Gap. I would also point out Abercrombie. This is the stock that's had a huge run. And certainly you saw the velvet ropes outside the stores. We saw them in New York. And guess what? We saw them in London. And behind the velvet ropes inside the stores, there were very few people actually lined up buying items. So I would watch out for Abercrombie. And then certainly with the bigger box space, you know, you'll see mixed signals. Everybody's under pressure. Target might do a little bit better because they've had some really interesting collaboration product with Neiman. But by the way, some of that was also on sale. So I think there'll be weakness across the board, but Target and Macy's will probably outperform the group.
And you like limited brands as well, right, Stacey?
Limited is absolutely one of the most consistent retailers out there. I personally own the stock, and they have a history of special dividends. This is a consistent player that always has newness in the stores. They just started their international flagship in London. It's doing phenomenally well. So that international piece of the puzzle is just starting.
And Laura, online, I mean, I heard some big numbers, percentage-wise gains year over year on how online buying was going. Is that good or bad for the retailers overall right now?
The vast majority of the retailers we follow have a small part of their business online. For the online business to be booming, if there's not something similar to drive traffic in the stores, we've got concerns there. One of our best online retailers, Urban Outfitters, is going to stop breaking out the store versus e-commerce. So the concern is that perhaps they're going to mask weakness in the stores and hope that the overall growth, particularly online growth, carries the company as a whole. None of the retailers we follow has enough of a mix online compared to Williams-Sonoma, which is by far the leader in the group.
Oh, they got to get into the 21st century or the late 20th century, whatever it is. Ladies, thank you both for joining us. Appreciate it very much.